think that it is important to realize that in the healing journey, especially when you're going the natural route, it's very normal to take steps forward and take steps back, and everybody's healing journey looks differently. I thought I had found what was working for me, and it did for a little while, and I was in a better place. I was dealing with the loss of my womb and not being able to bear a child ever. I was dealing with, being told everything was in my head and not being validated, and everything that came with that. I was dealing with, feeling like I was a broken woman and realizing that I'm not broken, and that I'm strong, and that I can get through these things. And I took my life back a little bit, and I found out who I was despite all of that, and who I was growing into as a woman. And then I started to have urinary symptoms, and I started to have, I guess, worse urinary symptoms, and I started to have bowel pain, to the point where I would be like doubled over, about ready to pass out kind of pain. And sex started to become super painful, and that really took a toll in my relationship and eventually marriage. And the hysterectomy definitely did help with the endo pain that I was experiencing, because I wasn't bleeding once a month, so I wasn't experiencing that pain that feels like a hot knife is being stabbed through your abdomen. I wasn't experiencing that monthly, but I was still having pelvic pain. And I had a couple more cystoscopies, and they found Hunter's lesions on my bladder. I had to have a bladder surgery right before Christmas one year, and that was excruciatingly painful. And I remember just sleeping through Christmas, all the festivities, and the bowel pain. I had colonoscopies, and I think, I've had four since the time I was 23, and I'm 35 now. And they have had to remove precancerous polyps, but that wasn't to blame for my bowel pain. They didn't find endo in the intestines, and they weren't seeing the normal restrictions or whatever that they would see when endo was, all over the colon. So I did find a OBGYN to do another laparoscopy to see what was going on, and he was thinking that it was going to look like a bomb went off with all the scar tissue and endo and everything that he was thinking was going to be in there. And he said I had minimal scar tissue, and he didn't find anything, and he had no idea why I was having bowel pain. So I felt like I was kind of back to square one, and that continued. And then all of a sudden I started having this crazy rash go up my body. And the thing about this rash is I've had it since I was 12, but I've never had it this bad. When I got it when I was 12, it was just on my from my knee down to my ankle, and it was just some red dots. I went to the doctor, didn't know what it was. Here's some topical steroid cream. I thought it was just some sort of allergic reaction. 17 years, I dealt with it just off and on. It would go away within a day or two. When I got it, this time in my 30s, it actually started to go up my body, up my abdomen, on my arms, and on my face. So ended up in the emergency room. I diagnosed myself, basically, like, I think I have blah 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 blah. And I started about 6 months of being poked and prodded more than I ever thought possible. I saw every specialist it seemed like that was known to the Western medical world. And finally, 6 months after skin biopsies and kidney biopsies and all these blood draws, I finally was diagnosed with IgA vasculitis. And they were thinking I was born with it. Definitely had it since I was 12, because that was the first time the rash popped up. It's an autoimmune disease, and If you know all my endo ladies, you know when you have one, you typically have another, and they are trying to actually classify endo as an autoimmune. So I get diagnosed with IgA vasculitis. I start working with another naturopath, um, trying to figure out how to support my system going through this naturally. It's a painful disease. It attacks my kidneys. It attacks my joints. It attacks my GI tract. It attacks my blood, my small blood vessels. So I get this rash, which can be very itchy, and sometimes painful. And the joint pain, I could wake up with the pain to the point where I'm limping and it hurts to walk, and then it's fine the next day. Started working with a naturopath, and she discovered having a tonsillectomy might help, just with some research that she did. So I had a tonsillectomy in my 30s, which if you don't absolutely have to have one, don't. It was awful. I ended up in the hospital for a couple days, and at that point they basically said, you have to be on an immunosuppressant or you're going to die. I was against taking anything pharmaceutical, and they tried to tell me when I was first diagnosed with it that I needed to be on immunosuppressant, and I was just like, no, not doing it. So it took them to the point where it's like, you're gonna die if you don't do this. So I did, and I was on that for 3 years, and I again, through that 3 years, tried to find more therapies that were going to help. And I discovered pelvic floor physical therapy and functional medicine, and just getting connected with more practitioners around me that have a different perspective, looking at it from a different lens, and getting answers. And pelvic floor physical therapy has been one of the biggest, aside from our Vigo, when I initially started that, it has been life-changing for me as well. It's helped sex be less painful. It's helped with urinary issues. It's helped with just generalized pelvic pain, and help just kind of, I feel like women who have so much pelvic pain and go through surgeries or painful birthing processes, or any kind of trauma to this area, we kind of disassociate ourselves from the area, and it's hard to connect with those muscles and realize what's going on there. And PT has kind of allowed me to regain some of that consciousness and that connection. And functional medicine has opened up some other doors of things I've been low on, and supplementing and just doing things naturally, because let's face it, in my case, Western medicine, although there's a time and a place, I feel like has failed me more than once. And I had to find new ways of finding a new normal that was going to work for me now. And it was tough, but you got to keep digging. You have to be your own health advocate.